A Heart for Ruby, written by Francesca E. Hewitt. Read to you by Miss Keating. It was Wednesday morning and Ruby Ray stood at the gym hall clutching a red heart-shaped balloon to her chest. Girls and boys danced all around her. As Ruby watched them, she felt more and more miserable. They were all so much better than she was. Sometimes they stood on tiptoe and turned circles. Sometimes they jumped in the air. And as they turned and jumped, they waved their balloons gracefully in time to the music. Ruby's heart sank down to her toes. When she stood on tiptoe and turned circles, she wobbled so much she fell over. When she jumped, her feet hardly left the ground. And when she tried to wave her balloon gracefully, it got caught between her knees. There were no two ways about it, Ruby thought. I just can't dance. Come along, Ruby, shouted Mrs. Golightly. Jump! Ruby gritted her teeth, took a little run, jumped, and landed with a huge thud. You could be a little lighter, Ruby, Mrs. Golightly said gently. Little. Love hearts should be lighter than air. After they'd finished the lesson, Mrs. Golightly told everyone to walk quietly back to the classroom. The Valentine's Day concert is on Friday, she reminded them. Only a few days left to practice our love heart dance. Ruby leant over to her best friend, Rowan. I'll never be lighter than air, she whispered. Not by Friday, anyway. Of course you will, Rowan whispered back. You just have to believe you can do it. Rowan took something green and fluffy out of her pencil case. My lucky mascot, she explained, handing it to Ruby. You want to borrow it? Ruby stared at Rowan's fluffy mascot. What is it? She asked. It's a four-leaf clover, Rowan said. It fits in the end of my pencil. My gran gave it to me, she added. She says four-leaf clovers are lucky, and this one always brings me luck. The bell rang for home time. Ruby handed the four-leaf clover back to Rowan. Thanks ever so much, she said. I might try it next time we do mental maths. Auntie Pooja was waiting in the playground. She was studying at college and lived with Mum and Ruby. Mum didn't finish work till late, so Auntie Pooja always collected Ruby from school. It was snowing, so Ruby held Auntie Pooja's hand tight. Do you have a lucky mascot? Ruby asked as they slithered along. I've got lots. Lucky rings, lucky necklaces, and lucky earrings? Auntie Pooja nodded and tucked her hair behind her ears. She was wearing dangly diamond earrings. These earrings are one of my luckiest pairs, she said as they arrived home. I wore them when I sat my driving test, and I passed. Inside, Auntie Pooja knelt down and lit the gas fire. Then she stood up and shook the snow from her hair. As her earrings swayed, they sent hundreds of tiny lights onto the walls. It looked as if the whole room was filled with bright, shiny raindrops. The shiny raindrops made Ruby feel all light and tingly inside. Perhaps, she said, if I had a sparkly mascot, it would make me lighter than air. Auntie Pooja smiled. Let's make my earrings sparkle even more. And laughing, she grabbed Ruby's hands and they danced around and round the room. After tea, Auntie Pooja said, let's look in my jewelry box. It's bound to be a sparkling lucky mascot for you. Ruby was over the moon. A sparkly lucky mascot was sure to make her lighter than air. Ever since Rowan had showed her a fluffy four-leaf clover, Ruby just couldn't get mascots out of her head. Do you have a lucky mascot, Mum? She asked after tea. I have a lucky hairdo, Mum said. Whenever I want something to go extra specially well, she went on, I ask my friend at Crazy Cuts to do my hair. She winked at Ruby. She's giving me a funky Valentine's hairdo on Friday, so your dance is bound to be a success. Ruby said nothing. The thought of Mum's funky hairdo worried her. Supposing the love heart dance wasn't a success. Supposing she wobbled and fell, or landed with a huge thud. She tiptoed upstairs to Auntie Pooja's room. Her aunt was lying on her bed reading. Can I come in? Ruby asked. For a little while, said Auntie Pooja. I have to study. I have an exam on Monday. She brought out her jewelry box and opened it. Ruby stirred the bright jumble of jewelry round and round. She found a pair of shiny blue earrings. They were shaped like little tears. When she held them up, tiny blue raindrops seemed to fall on the walls. Those are lucky earrings, Auntie Pooja said. I wore them at a Bollywood dancing competition. They went with my blue sari and my pointy blue shoes. Auntie Pooja put on the earrings. Then she spun round very fast. When she spun, she kept her back straight, so she didn't wobble at all. Did you win? Ruby asked. Auntie Pooja nodded. First prize. Ruby stirred the bright jumble of jewelry round and round again. She found another pair of earrings. They were parrots, with shiny black eyes and emerald green feathers. When she held them up, tiny green raindrops seemed to fall on the walls. Those are very lucky earrings, Auntie Pooja said. I wore them to my first netball match. They went with my green skirt and stripy green socks. She took off her blue earrings and put on the green ones. Then she jumped up very high. When Auntie Pooja landed, she bent her knees. She landed as softly as snow. Did you win? Ruby asked. Top of the league. Ruby peered back into the jewellery box. She stirred round and round, but she could only find one more earring. It was heart-shaped and covered with bright red stones. When Ruby held it up, tiny red raindrops seemed to fall on the walls. Ruby thought that it was the most beautiful earring she'd ever seen, and she waited to hear how lucky it was. By this time, Auntie Pooja had an unhappy story to tell. My granny gave me those earrings, she said, which makes them very special, but I never found out they were lucky because I lost one. Ruby stroked the twinkling red heart, and she thought it looked terribly lonely. I was dancing in a disco, Auntie Pooja went on, jumping very high and spinning very fast. One of them must have flown off. I never ever found it. She took the earring from Ruby. I wanted you to have these one day, she said sadly, because they're made of rubies. Then she pinned a little red heart onto Ruby's jumper, right above her own heart. Your very own sparkly lucky mascot, Auntie Pooja told Ruby, to bring you luck with your love heart dance. Ruby peered down at the little ruby heart. It didn't look so lonely anymore, and though she couldn't see them, she knew her chin was covered with tiny red raindrops. She was sure her sparkly mascot would bring her all the luck in the world. On Thursday afternoon, when Ruby trudged home through the snow with Auntie Pooja, her heart glowed with happiness. The last love heart dance practice had gone really well. As they had waited to start, Rowan had whispered to Ruby, "Remember, just believe you can do it." Ruby had nodded happily. With the ruby earring pinned to her t-shirt, she really did believe she could dance as well as anyone. And she did. That afternoon, with those magical sparkles glistening on her chin, she felt as graceful as Auntie Pooja. As Ruby began to dance, she just knew she wouldn't wobble, and she didn't. The more she danced, the more she felt her steps becoming lighter and lighter. Soon they were lighter than air, just like Auntie Pooja's. Mrs. Golightly was delighted. "What an improvement, Ruby," she said, beaming. "You're a proper little love heart now." One thing, however, still bothered Ruby. If Auntie Pooja hadn't lost the other ruby earring, she could have worn them both to her exam on Monday. They would have been sure to bring her luck. It was such a shame. "I'm going to study for a bit," said Auntie Pooja when they arrived home, and she went upstairs. Ruby flopped down on the seat and thought about missing earring. She wished with all her heart that she could find it. It had been very lonely all on its own somewhere. Sadly, she began to practice her love heart dance. Then she stopped. Somehow, her heart just wasn't in it. Unpinning the ruby from her jumper, she climbed the stairs. She knocked softly on Auntie Pooja's door. "May I come in for a minute?" she asked. "Just for a minute." Auntie Pooja was sitting at her desk surrounded by piles and piles of books. Rather shyly, Ruby held out the ruby heart. "You can have it," she told Auntie Pooja, "to bring you luck in your exam." To Ruby's surprise, Auntie Pooja burst out laughing. Then she gave her a big hug and a big red kiss. "What a sweetheart you are, Ruby," she said. She picked up one of the thickest books and gave it a thump. "But I don't need a lucky mascot to pass my exam. All I need to do is study hard." She pinned the ruby heart back onto Ruby's chest. "Thank you very much," she said. "It was a lovely thought." On Friday afternoon, everyone came to the gym hall for Valentine's Day concert. Mum and Auntie Pooja sat in the front row, both looking extremely glamorous. Mum's hair had red-tipped spikes, and Auntie Pooja's was piled up like a chocolate twirl. Mum was wearing a new red top covered in sequins, and Auntie Pooja was wearing a bright pink sari. When Ruby walked out, ready to start the love heart dance, she was sure her ruby heart was sparkling twice as much as before. The dance began. Everyone turned and jumped and waved their balloons gracefully, but no one danced as gracefully as Ruby. When she stood on tiptoe and turned, she kept her back straight, and she hardly wobbled at all. When she jumped, she soared into the air, and when she landed, she bent her knees and landed softly as snow. As Ruby took her final bow, Auntie Pooja gave her a big wink. Ruby winked back, and she was sure the ruby heart twinkling on her chest was winking too.